We get a major update from an NHL Insider giving huge details on the Brock Boeser extension talks, including where the Canucks and Boeser stand heading into the March 7th trade deadline. We're going to break all this down and more later on this episode. Before we get into it, we are at 6,755 subscribers. Shout out to everyone that subscribed and following along with all this Canucks news. If you haven't subscribed yet and you want to stay up to date on everything to do with the Canucks, go down and hit that free subscribe button and we'll keep you up to date on everything around the team. But with that today, we got to hop straight into it, where we did see in a recent interview with Sportsnet 650, Frank Seravalli went in to talk about where the Canucks and Brock Boeser currently stand going into the trade deadline. Now, everyone knows this is a saga that has been going on for months, and it does seem like Frank, and shout out to Canucks Summary on Twitter, I'm going to link that and the interview down below in the description, but shout out to Canucks Summary for just filling out what Frank really talked about in this interview. He said, and this is summarizing, towards the top of the Canucks to-do list. Now, seeing this, I do want to touch on this quickly. It's awesome to see that the Canucks are really prioritizing getting Brock signed or figuring out what to do with Brock going into the deadline. Thinks there's a likelihood or possibility he gets re-signed. Can't see him being held on past the trade deadline and then re-signed. Comfort level between the two sides during the process. Brock knows he'll get paid by someone. He feels a strong connection to the Canucks that is pulling him to resign. And I'm going to touch on this in a little bit, but looking at this, we know the Canucks are actively trying to figure out what to do. And Frank Seravalli said it perfectly in this, where it's on the top of their to-do list. Brock wants to sign, but he knows he can get a major extension somewhere. Now, looking at Brock this year, he isn't having the 40-goal season that he had just last season, but looking at Brock at the age of 28, just turning 28, 50 games played, 18 goals, 17 assists for 35 points, 102 shots. Yes, the plus-minus doesn't look great, playing just under 18 minutes, but the Canucks were a team that were very struggling to start the year, so seeing the plus-minus, I don't really like to look at it, but we know what Brock Boeser brings to this team, and that is goal scoring and a clutch in the playoffs. Now, looking at Brock's contract, we know 6.65. This is the last year 3 of 3. And listen, we all know this should have been a long-term deal and not a 3-year bridge deal, but that's in the past, and we got to focus on the future. Now, looking at Brock, we know 40 goals last year, 33 assists for a career high in goals, and a career high 73 points, 12 points in 12 playoff games, including 7 goals. We've seen him score a hat trick during the National Series. This guy in Brock Boeser is a major piece for the Canucks, and he has been since he's been drafted. Someone that can go out, score 20 plus goals every single season, a couple where he scored 18 or 16, but not in a full season. We know what Brock brings to this team, and the Canucks know this as well. Brock Boeser, and it's without a doubt, he's going to get a pay raise. $6.65 million for a guy that can score you 20 plus and 40 goals is not going to get paid the same, and we've seen from this as well in the Seravalli interview. Has been a ton of progress on the contract talks, but is already making $6.5 million. Term will be a big part of it from an AAV perspective. Don't have to stretch to give him a raise. Wouldn't be surprised if he just got under 8 or 9 million AAV. So the biggest thing is, and we've known from all the reports that's been flying around on this team, Brock wants close to $8.5 to $9 million, and it looks like he wants an 8-year extension. Now, looking at his current contract, yes, $6.65 on a $3 million deal. If the Canucks could get him in on 3 to 4 years at $8.5 to $9 million, yes, that would be incredible. But the biggest thing with Brock, and the sad thing with Brock, is the consistent injuries. Now, looking at Brock, he has been stellar. Last year, we've seen him miss 1 regular season game. He missed a few playoff games, still scoring 40 goals. This year, he did miss, I think it's 7 to 8 games. Looking at the previous years, he's never hit the 82 games. Now, a lot of players have not played all 82 games, but Brock has been hovering around the 60 to 70 range leading up to last year. And it seems like he's going to repeat it once again this season. Now, when healthy, as I said, 40 goals is something not to bat your eyes at because there's not a lot of players around the National Hockey League that can do this. Now, going into their current cap hits, they do have a couple guys, and we're going to look at the defense first, that they need to re-sign. Derek Forbort is someone that I expect to hit free agency and not be brought back from this team. We actually seen reports saying that Forbort could be traded ahead of the deadline, as we've seen the emergence of DP. Even Victor Mancini looked great in his last game, or his debut game, I should say, with the Canucks. You might be watching this before the game tonight, so if you are, then we could see a different story on this. But looking at this, Forbort could be someone moved. No, Juleson I expect to be moved on or signed on a cheap two-way contract or a one-way contract under $1 million. Looking at the defense, though, they do have everyone locked up. Thatcher Demko, a different story. We know he has next year, but going into the season after that, he will be a UFA. So the Canucks do need to figure out their goaltending for the future. I mean, they pretty much figured it out, giving Kevin Lankinen his extension until 2030. But the Canucks have the defense all set up. Brock Boeser is the main part on this forward group. Now, looking at the rest of the forwards, we do have some other guys that's going to have to be re-signed this offseason and 2 years from now. Looking at this, Brock Boeser at 6.65 does sit on the top of the list, and it seems like the top of the Canucks list, as we've seen from the Seravalli interview as well. But looking at the Canucks forwards, we know Brock Boeser is a UFA at the end of the year. Pius Suter is a UFA as well, making $1.6 million. He will be demanding a raise as well. Arshdeep Bains probably will not be coming back on a huge contract. I want Arshdeep back. I'm not saying he's not going to come back, but not a big contract like we're going to see with Pius Suter and Brock Boeser. But when you look into the future on this team, Connor Garland, UFA in 2 seasons, that's 26-27. Teddy Bluger, once again a UFA at the end of next season. Same with Kiefer Sherwood and Amon. Looking at these guys, these are going to be raises as well. Connor Garland has been a huge part of this Canucks team, leading the forwards in scoring for quite some time. We know he's going to ask for a raise, and he surely deserves a raise as well. The OEL contract is currently 4.6, I believe, against the cap going into next season. And for the next 2 years, the cap is rising, so that is a situation as well. But looking at the Canucks having roughly 23, I believe, million going into next free agency, it's going to get tricky if they have to give Brock north of 9 million or if they give him 9 on the dot. Now, am I saying Brock is not worth 9? No, I am not saying that. As I said, a 40-goal scorer, someone that can go out, score clutch goals, and someone that knows the system on this team. But looking at the free agents, it does get quite interesting. Spending 9 on Brock will be a good idea if they end up doing it. But looking at some of the free agents on this list, I mean, wingers alone, Mitch Marner, Mikko Rantanen, Ehlers, these guys are set to join free agency as UFAs going into this offseason. Brock Boeser is on this list. But going through, it's going to get interesting if the Canucks decide to go the route of moving Boeser, maybe trying to sign someone. This list is not fully updated. As you can see, that Marcus Pettersson is still there at 11. But the biggest problem with guys like Mitch Marner, Mikko Rantanen, and Ehlers, they're a hell of a player. But the biggest thing is the cap hit. We can see Rantanen, and he's asking for close to 14 million, it does seem from reports. Mitch Marner is going to demand more than 11 million. So if the Canucks don't sign Brock, it's going to get interesting on how they replace him. Is this going to be something where they acquire someone via trade, maybe someone in their mid-20s, just waiting for a breakout season? Or are we going to see them go out and spend all this money on a free agent going into the offseason? But what's your guys' thoughts? What's your thoughts on from the report from Sportsnet 650? As I said, this and the summaries will be in the description down below. But what's your guys' thoughts on Brock asking for close to 9 million, or what Seravalli said he's going to be asking for, and the AAV? What's the ideal contract you would like to give Brock? Yes, you could say, hey, $1 million for 8 years. Obviously, that's not going to happen. But what's your ideal contract? Because in my mind, I think an $8.5 to $9 million deal for maybe 5 to 6 years would be the perfect middle ground for both the team and the player. But I'm not a general manager, but I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts down in the comments. Way down there, leave a like, subscribe, share this with your friends. We'll be back with another episode, so keep your eyes out for that. But I've been your host, Mark. Bye, and take care.